Welcome to the New Release Friday on Generation Movie on the Indie Escape Network. My name is JW Colwell. I am going to be talking about some new movies that are hitting our cineplexes this week. Going over a little bit of news really quick. We got a comment. Good afternoon, friends. It's just me, Ken. It's just me and you, Ken, right now. But that's okay. We're here. We're going to get it out into the ether so people can figure out if they're going to go see these movies this weekend, Ken. And we have, it's New Release Friday, but it's a lot of death this new release, lots of murder this new release Friday. And so the two movies we're going to be talking about today in a moment. First movie we're going to be talking about is a little movie called Psycho Killer, which is from the creators of the writer of 7 and 8 millimeter and the creators and producers and producing team from Barbarian. And then we're also going to be talking about How to Make a Killing, which is the new Glen Powell movie that's based on the classic Alec Guinness comedy called Kind Hearts and Coronets, about somebody working their way through a family to murdering their family to get an inheritance. So we'll talk about that. Like I said, lots of death. We have a psycho killer, and then we have a kind of a fun, slick, fun killer this weekend. News first. We do have to say this. Rest in peace to Eric Dane. He passed away at 53, super young. He was known for being Dr. Mark Sloan on Grey's Anatomy. He had been diagnosed recently with ALS, so he basically had Lou Gehrig's disease. And he died within 10 months of being diagnosed. So just kind of very fast, very quick. But he had a lot of things. He was on Euphoria. He played kind of a weird dad on Euphoria. Was in Charmed. He was in X-Men Last Stand. He was in Burlesque. He's survived by his wife, Rebecca Gayheart, and their 2 daughters. He did a lot of things. He had guest roles on Saved by the Bell back in the day, Married with Children, Charmed, Gideon's Crossing. But he became McSteamy on Grey's Anatomy, and that's where he kind of, found his voice. Basically, he finished Euphoria. He just did Euphoria. And so, he also did a show called The Last Ship, which is kind of like this cult show about a global catastrophe wiping out most of the world's population. That was on TNT. Kind of a cult show that people like. But he was a good actor, right? A good television actor. And he was also somebody that people loved, people cared about. And so we say rest in peace, Eric Dane. Thank you for your hard work. And, what a terrible disease. There are reports that he couldn't even talk or, be like recognize his loved ones at the end, which is just, these diseases are awful. Hello, Jamie Hill. Thank you. Hi. And then Ken McKernan. Hello. Jamie Hill saying hello to Ken McKernan. Yes, the Canadian faction is well represented today. Cool. Let's get, with that out of the way, rest in peace, Eric Dane. I hope he finds a little bit of less pain in the next world. But let's get to what we're all here for, which is welcome to New Release Friday. And so here's what I'm going to say. We're in the middle of February, so not every movie is going to be a big hit, and maybe movies are going to become streaming hits or things along those lines. We did do Wuthering Heights and Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die last week. Both of those movies, one of those movies is a big hit. The other one is not. Is going to become a cult film when it hits streaming because it's very good. And the same might be said for today's 2 movies that are not necessarily the best movies, but they're movies that are coming out brand new. The one we're going to start with is Psycho Killer. It's got a good hook, kids. So basically, it's a 2026 horror film. It's directed by Gavin Polone, written by Andrew Kevin Walker, and you may know that name as the person who wrote 7 and wrote 8mm. So that should give you an idea of where we're at. And so basically, this is a cat and mouse thriller, a traditional cat and mouse thriller that has heightened levels of gore, although it's not all practical effects. There's a lot of CGI in the kills, but basically it follows Georgina Campbell, who is this young cop whose husband gets murdered by this killer that's on a rampage, and he's called the Satanic Slasher. And that's what he looks like. He is a huge hulking mass of a human being. And she, after her husband gets murdered, decides to follow him. You may recognize Georgina Campbell from Barbarian. She was the lead in Barbarian. And so she's kind of making a name for herself in these kind of movies. The movie does have a very sadistic bend to it. It's very gory. Anybody who runs into this guy usually ends up in pieces, various pieces, all over the place. So it's not a film for the faint of heart. It is very gory. It is pretty well written. It's got problems here or there. But this person playing this character is an imposing presence. The name of the actor is James Preston Rogers. He's a former wrestler. He portrays the character called the Satanic Slasher. The movie also has Malcolm McDowell in a small minor role. Logan Miller's also in it in a small minor role. And basically, it's this cat and mouse between this woman trying to trace down the person that murdered her state trooper husband, as well as, you know, all these other people. He goes on like a big kind of tear. And what I will say is, it's basic cat and mouse. It's like, I'm going to track you here, I'm going to track you there. I can guess where you're going by the thing, you know, and I'm putting all the pieces together, putting all the symbols together on the walls that the guy leaves, you know, the trail of blood he leaves. So it's got a lot in common with Seven in that regard. It's not as well written as Seven, and it's certainly not as well written as something like, say, last year's Longlegs. It's not that good. It's not as good as Longlegs. But it is like, the guy is a striking presence. He is a big dude. And he, like, even in the scenes where he is not wearing his outfit, which is this outfit most of the time, he is still a striking dude. And it has ties to real life events. So one of the things that I think Andrew Kevin Walker does very well is he ties it to real life events, or real life. So there was a murder in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It like in the 80s, the part of Satanic Panic ties to that. It ties to how music might be an inspiration for serial killers. It ties into, and this is a weird one, but you have to trust, it ties a little bit into, it's the same area of the 3 Mile Island incident, the nuclear power plant that had a meltdown in the 80s. So it tries to bring them all together, and then on top of it adds a button, kind of a conspiracy theory thing to it that's a little all over the place. But what I would say is that it's trying hard. Now, would I like most of the effects to be practical in a slasher movie? Yes. Would I like less CGI in a slasher movie? Yes. I want practical. I want the stuff of legend in the past, but it's decent. It's not great. I don't think it's gonna change the world or inspire other movies. But I will say there is a really great sequel hook that I don't think you can see coming. And so if it does well enough, or it becomes a cult film, or people gravitate towards it and like it, and there are many things to like. Georgina Campbell is very likable as the cop who's trying to, you know, stop the person that murdered her husband. And you know, she is the traditional Clarice Starling clone who is putting together, and maybe a little bit smarter than the men who are in charge of the investigation, kind of thing. Or is it part of a bigger conspiracy that they're kind of letting him run rampant for no reason? Or is there a reason? I don't know. It asks a lot of questions. It ties into a lot of weird things that you wouldn't expect to be tied into a serial killer movie. And does it work? Yeah, there's at least 2 or 3 really good jump scares. The kills there are 2 kills, there are 2 sets of kills that are in particular pretty gruesome and practical effects and pretty graphic and are really kind of over the top. Like, you're sitting in the theater going, holy shit, like what just happened there? And that's fine. There are 2 that are in particular that are pretty gruesome and well done and just something I've never seen before. And I've seen a lot of slasher movies. But I don't know that it's as smart as it thinks it is, and I don't know that it's not covering ground that's already been covered. It has a very basic baseline view of Satanism, and then like it has 2 different opposing views. Somebody who's willing to go all the extra mile, and then people who are like satanic posers kind of thing, which it kind of makes fun of. And it's a little all over the place, but it is, if you like slasher movies, she's a good protagonist. She's smart. She's effective. She's a good shot, like things like that. And the killer, like I said, the satanic slasher, imposing. He is a big dude. And when he's bearing down on you, it's even scarier. So I didn't hate it. I don't necessarily think it's like as good as Longlegs or anything like that, but it's fine. And it's something, if you like that sort of thing, kills are pretty good. It gets a little CGI crazy. But for the most part, practical effects. Comments, let's see. Hi, Jamie Hill. Hello, all. Hey, Joe. So Psycho Killer's okay for a Canadian flick? Is it Canadian? He's not almost 6'6". He is 6'6". He is a big dude. It is a Canadian film. Holy shit. Okay. Nah. Interesting. No, it's actually not. It's Canadian and German. So it's a 20th Century Studios release in the US. But like I said, it's really interesting. Like I said, the guy, James Preston Rogers, he is really, really big. I also think it does. Malcolm McDowell's in it, and I think people will be excited that Malcolm McDowell's in it, but he doesn't have a lot to do. But it's good to see Malcolm McDowell. Always good to see Malcolm McDowell. Except if he's in Halloween by Rob Zombie. But for the most part, well done. It's. I think for people who like the genre, they will find things to really like. I think the sequel hook is really interesting, but I don't know that it's going to get a sequel. In which case, it's going to become the kind of cult film people will talk about, the movie that needed a sequel that never got it, which I think could be really interesting. But that's about. There's a lot of gore. If you have if you have a lot of people, things being carved into people, lots of blood on the walls, lots of violent kills like dismemberments. And a couple really good jump scares, but so not the top of the class, but not the bottom of the class either. Kind of just right in the middle. If a slasher movie is your gig, which I kind of like slasher movies, again, I think the hook is tantalizing. Just so many questions at the end of the movie where it's just like, wow, that would be a way interesting concept if they're going for what I think they're going for, which is a wag the dog kind of situation. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But it's in theaters. If you want to go see it this weekend, Psycho Killer. If it's your bag, you will definitely have enjoyment with it because he's great, and Georgina Campbell is really good. But it's a traditional cat and mouse movie. Nothing really jumping out except the imposing nature of the character and how it tries to tie in a bunch of real life events into a movie screenplay. Okay, second movie of the day. More killing. Then the second movie of the day is called How to Make a Killing. That's a tagline, $28 billion inheritance, 7 relatives standing in the way, How to Make a Killing. Glen Powell, another Glen Powell movie. Guy's got a lot of movies. He's got a lot of things going on. This, however, is an interesting kind of, it's a comedy. So first off, it's a black comedy. It's a dark, stark black comedy. Not like Psycho Killer. More like, and this is the movie it most references, is a movie called Kind Hearts and Coronets, which is an Alec Guinness movie from the 60s, where Alec Guinness played a bunch of characters from the same family, and also had the same kind of plot where basically he was somebody was trying to move up the family and killing people as they were going along, trying to get the inheritance, right? So it is almost a direct, it's a kind-hearted kind of homage to that movie. So it's got a little bit of comedy. It's got a little bit of it's got violence, but it's not necessarily the most violent violence. It's just kind of there. But it's it's a dark comedy, which are hard to pull off unless you know exactly what you're going for. And it kind of does, like, it kind of knows what it's doing, and it kind of doesn't. And it sort of works. And like I said, it's really hard to pull off a comedy that involves a dark structure. A black comedy. Pitch black comedies are very hard to pull off unless you really know what you're doing. Heathers, The War of the Roses, things that are important. So Kind Hearts and Coronets, that's the movie that I'm talking about originally, right? So it's Alec Guinness. He plays all these different characters. And so in this one, Glen Powell plays a character who his name is Beckett Redfellow. He is the heir to the Redfellow estate. And basically he is, his mother has been cut out of the estate, and he has grown up in New Jersey, watching as everything kind of falls around it. But before his mother passes away at a young age, and he's put into the orphanage system of New Jersey, his mother says, "You are the heir to a vast fortune, and you need to live your life the best way you can, the best way you can, the best version of your life." And she passes away, and so Beckett kind of bounces through life. He meets in his younger days, he meets a character named Julia Steinway. She's a childhood friend. She's played by Margaret Qualley as the movie progresses. She's rich. She's uber rich. And they kind of have a childhood flirtation. They share a first kiss. He gets invited to her birthday, even though she doesn't want him there necessarily because he's a poor. And so basically, but she comes back to him later in the movie, basically as like a kind of like a foil, because he'd always been made fun of for saying he was heir to a fortune, and she's like, yeah, whatever, and doesn't believe it and all that other stuff. But eventually it comes down to Beckett starts to figure out that there's only 7 people between him and the fortune. And so he devises a plan. And this is where the film gets some boosting, because the cast is really good. You got Glen Powell, hot off of Anyone But You, hot off of Running Man, hot off all of these different, Top Gun Maverick, all these things he's been doing. You got Margaret Qualley, who's coming off The Substance, and Honey Don't, and she's one of our good young actresses. You also have Jessica Henwick in this movie. She plays a love interest of Beckett's, who's also been dating one of Beckett's cousins, who he has to knock off. And those cousins are played by great actors. Zach Woods from Silicon Valley, and Topher Grace. He plays kind of like an artiste of the family who doesn't actually have a job, but just can create art all day because he's insanely wealthy. Topher Grace plays another member of the family, another cousin, who is a televangelist who's had all kinds of run-ins, all kinds of trouble with the law, with his money, with drugs, with everything. And he uses this religious thing as a pastor to get him out of the trouble. Like, he has pictures around his office with him with El Chapo. And he's a nice guy if you just get to know him. And so basically, Beckett sets forth plans to murder the members of the family that are in the way. Now, in between that, in between the murders of some of them, his uncle, played by Bill Campbell, great character actor, basically takes him under his wing and gives him a job at a financial institution where one of the cousins had worked. And Beckett knocks it out of the park. And so Beckett starts to get the idea, like, I can have a life of love, or I can have a life of insane wealth by knocking off the members of the family. And so it becomes a struggle, right? And then the movie kind of takes all the twists and turns. It's funny. It has a lot of laugh out loud moments. Powell's really good as Beckett. And Margaret Qualley is good as she's more of the femme fatale of this black comedy. She's more of the femme fatale. Jessica Henwick, I should say. Sorry. She's more of the quality female. She's a person that was in the fashion industry, who gives up the fashion industry to go and learn how to teach. So, and she is the best thing that Beckett's had in his life since his mother. So he has to continuously make a choice. Am I going to go for the money and get rid of these people and continually up the ante? Because as the people start getting knocked off, the FBI steps in, and basically what they say is anytime a family of incredible wealth, when people start getting knocked off in the family, the FBI steps in because they're going to guard the members of the wealthy families, which is kind of a weird position we're in right now in the country. And so it builds to a crescendo. I also should say, supporting cast is fantastic. You have Zach Woods, you have Topher Grace, you have Ed Harris, plays the patriarch of the family. He is also the person that is responsible for kicking out Beckett and his mother out of the house when she gets pregnant when she's a kid. So it's got a lot of good things going for it. It's got a pretty good script. You will either be, it is a dark comedy though. So I don't think anybody coming into it, if you don't have the sensibilities that it's a dark comedy, that it's going to take dark turns of human nature, may not be for you, because it definitely, the person I saw it with was not prepared for it to go dark as it did, right? When you go to see something like Psycho Killer, you expect the dark. When you go to see something like How to Make a Killing, which is like kind of a comedy with murder in it, you maybe not want it to take a super dark turn, which it does. So, it's got a little bit of a tone shift towards the end. And you definitely want Beckett with somebody not you want him to get the best version of his life. So you're rooting for him, and the people. One of the criticisms I can lay is that except for the uncle who ends up being very two-dimensional, ends up having, being very two-dimensional, taking Beckett under his wing and saying, basically saying, I'm sorry, I should have come and get you. I should have come and gotten you and my sister. I should have made sure that she was buried in the family plot. All these, like, he says a lot of things to Beckett where he says, I'm sorry for not standing up to my father, which is, except for him, a lot of the rich people in the movie are one-dimensional, right? It is a traditional one-dimensional. Rich people are really kind of ignorant and at their baseline evil, right? And I think that's, it just needs a little seasoning. But Powell's great. Quality's really good. Jessica Henwick is really good. Bill Camp is fantastic. All supporting bits. Zach Woods, Topher Grace, Ed Harris. It's got a great supporting cast. Has potential to become like I said, we're in the cult film portion of this year right now, where all these little movies are coming out, where they're kind of have like they're fun and original, and they're not necessarily going to be the biggest box office movies, but they're gonna maybe when they hit streaming, people are gonna be like, I like that. That was good. I had fun watching that. Psycho Killer having fun will be one thing, but this movie is fun because you're trying to figure out how Beckett's going to get around everything he needs to get around, how to get around the FBI, how to get around killing the family members, how easy it might be or might not be, and then the family members who are in front of him who happen, one or two of them happen to be good people. So it's like, what do you do? Margaret Qualley is not playing a nice character either. She's, been corrupted by money to the point where she is just, very greedy and very nasty. And it's a fun movie, but it's not necessarily a memorable one. This third week in February. But it might be your bag. You know what I mean? Like, we are at this portion of the time where we, basically are making movies, and all you can really hope for on a weekly basis is something fun, something original. And if it's not original, if it's derivative, you want to at least it to have some sort of spark of imagination. And these two movies have it. It's just they're not hitting on all cylinders. Like last week, I felt like Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die hit on all cylinders. These two don't. But it doesn't mean they're horrible movies, but it doesn't mean they're good movies either. So that's what I would say. If your bag is like comedy mystery, kind of like Knives Out, but without the really good script, How to Make a Killing might be your bag. If you're into slasher movies like Longlegs, if Longlegs was the kind of thing where you're like, oh, this is really good, I really enjoyed that, Psycho Killer might be your bag, but it's not as good as Longlegs or Barbarian or any of the recent ones where they're really well done, kind of slasher / cat and mouse thrillers, right? So it's not the best week, but it's not the worst week either. And if you're a fan of the genres, there are definitely things that you might enjoy. So that is the show for today. New movies out. You have plenty of other movies playing right now that are doing well, including Goat, including Wuthering Heights, and a lot of things are out right now. Send Help is still doing very well in theaters, and we'll see what's happening next week. We will be back. Scream 7. I will be seeing it on Thursday night. I will have a review for you Friday afternoon at 3, where new releases happen. New Release Friday is the new show we're doing on Friday afternoons. And so thank you for joining us today. Also, if you like our show, like and subscribe. Facebook, Instagram, IMDb, Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter, all those places. Also, we have shows coming up this week. We have a Generation movie coming up on Monday. We will be doing Around the World in 80 Days as part of our Oscar Decade Cavalcade. We also have a new episode of Loud Nerdy coming up on Tuesday night. And if you didn't catch our last episode of Loud Nerdy with the folks from Last Known Location, I cannot stress enough how much fun we had, how great it was, and how great the people are that are involved with that movie. Jennifer Kay and Amy Teresa and Danny Donnelly and Brian, who is the cinematographer. By all means, watch that as well. Thank you for joining me on a Friday afternoon, getting ready for your new release Friday and new releases at the movie theaters. Have a great weekend. We'll see everybody on Monday for Generation Movie. Stay safe. Go see a movie. Have fun. Bye.